Now, before you look to your partner or spouse freezing your bippy off up north and say, well, gee, it sounds like we need to move down south if there's so much availability, let me speak on behalf of anyone from here who's had to wait in a 4-hour line at Six Flags or Disney in the dead of summer. Stay where you are. The South is full. We got enough people here already. A massive inventory spike is hitting Texas and Florida right now and causing these local housing markets to completely collapse. The values in many cities in Texas and Florida are going down at record speed. For instance, take this listing in San Antonio. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath listed for $149,900. However, the value estimate on this house from Zillow a few months ago was $239,600. And now it's collapsed by over $98,000 over the last couple months, back to its level in mid-2021. And just to be clear, this isn't like a one-off anomaly. There are more declines coming in from Texas and Florida. And so what you've got to understand is that if you're a home buyer or a seller there right now, this crash is happening to you in real time. All the markers and indicators are there, especially given that this inventory spike that we're seeing in both states. Just take a look at this graph. Now, the yellow line is showing the inventory levels in Texas and Florida combined. We have about 250,000 homes on the market in Texas and Florida right now. And this is the highest level of inventory in Texas and Florida that we've seen going back 7 years. But take a look at this blue line, everybody. Compare Texas and Florida to the blue line, which is the inventory in the entire Northeast of America. Inventory in the Northeast is still minuscule to non-existent. In states like New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, there's only 90,000 homes on the market compared to the 250,000 homes in Texas and Florida. That's literally 270% more inventory in these two states than in the Northeast, when before the pandemic, they were basically the same amount. And so this points to the split nature of this housing downturn in America right now. This is not happening everywhere yet. It's happening in Texas and Florida right now. Now, first, because these two states were the big pandemic boom towns where the prices and rents just went way out of control. And so all these people from New York and California moved in and paid in cash. And so from there, all the real estate investors came in, all the home builders came in, and now we're in this down cycle of the real estate market. We're seeing all of those things that pushed Texas and Florida up during this boom now turn around and cause a crash. One by one, the builders who pulled all those permits, now those homes are getting forced onto the market for sale. The investors who bought up these homes now have turned around and are desperately trying to sell them. Those people who moved in from New York and California, many of them are moving back. And plenty are going back to work back in those original states now that remote work has basically been outlawed in this country. So we're seeing the downturn hit, and the downturn hit hard. So here's a couple of important things to understand. While we started to see some substantial declines in prices on a lot of listings in Florida and Texas, the values overall are still very high. We still have not seen this crash fully play out yet. In fact, we're really only seeing the beginning stages of this crash occur right now over the last 3 to 6 months. And because it's only the beginning stages, a lot of people out there don't believe prices are still going up in Florida and Texas. But when people say that, they're really kind of just looking at the past. They're looking at the fact that, yeah, the prices went up 12 months ago, 9 months ago, because there was a bit of an inventory shortage at the middle of 2023. But that's not relevant anymore. What's relevant is the trends in inventory and price cuts today. And they're suggesting that values are going to have to drop by an awful lot to get this thing balanced out. Like on this listing here in Tampa, Florida, it's a 4-bed, 3-bath, and just under 2,500 square feet. Currently listed at $899,000, which is after they just cut the price by $100K about 2 weeks ago. So they originally listed this thing for $1.1 million in July, which is 80.3% more than what they bought it for in 2019. Then they cut the price slightly to bring it under that $1 million price tag, listing it at $999,000 2 weeks after the original listing. And now they did a $100,000 cut, but it's likely this house is going to sit and they're going to need to make a bigger cut later on. And this again is a good indication of what's actually happening in these markets in Texas and Florida right now. The downturn is playing out. The inventory is spiking, the price cuts are spiking, and the sellers are reducing the prices, in some cases, by a lot. Now, before you look to your partner or spouse freezing your bippy off up north and say, well, gee, it sounds like we need to move down south if there's so much availability, let me speak on behalf of anyone from here who's had to wait in a 4-hour line at Six Flags or Disney in the dead of summer. Stay where you are. The South is full. We got enough people here already. And in fact, the values of all these vacant properties are still well above where they were before the pandemic hit. And that's the problem, because the affordability is still so bad in these states for local home buyers. And because the affordability is so bad, we're not going to see buyer demand balance things out anytime soon. The local home buyers in Texas and Florida can't even come close to affording or qualifying for the asking mortgages right now. In fact, according to USA Today, on average, 25 out of every 100 homes are actually affordable in Texas or Florida. And looking at the country as a whole, over 3/4, 77% of American households cannot afford a median-priced home in America, which clocked in at about $495,750 in 2024. To afford a home at this price, you'd have to make between $125,000 and $160,000 a year. But out of curiosity, do you know what the average income is in the state of Florida? $34,062 for individuals and $67,917 for households. And for Texas, it's $36,538 for individuals and $73,035 for full households. So needless to say, we've never seen anything like this in terms of Texas and Florida and lack of affordability. And a lot of people are starting to make a big deal out of the fact that the Federal Reserve is allegedly going to cut interest rates later this year. We're seeing more and more news reports about this. However, no one is sending any signals one way or the other on any particular meeting on when they're going to cut these rates. But most experts believe that there will be 2 rate cuts this year, one in September and maybe one in December. But what many people in the housing market are sorely mistaken on is what that's going to do to housing demand. Like, there's a lot of people in the housing market analysis field who think that a mortgage rate going to 6.5% is somehow going to magically bring buyers back. But I think it's going to take a whole lot more than 2 rate cuts to change. It's going to take huge increases in affordability, and those increases in affordability could possibly occur over the next 1 or 2 years, and it's going to start in Texas and in Florida. And that takes us to the end of today's video. I want to thank you for sticking around to the end. If this video gave you new insights or left you with more questions and answers, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for the latest updates on real estate trends, market shifts, and economic news. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the potential collapse of the Florida and Texas real estate markets? Are Florida and Texas actually in hell? What do you think? And what steps are you taking to protect your investments? Drop a comment below and join in this conversation. But for now, thank you again so much for joining us today. I'm your host, Zach Ritchie, and we'll see you in the next video.